Our next story is about containment. How does one stop a Donald Trump? Stop Trump from doing whatever he likes and steamrolling over anything he doesn't? This question is extremely important for Europe right now, especially members of NATO. They have two major fears. One, Trump may destroy the alliance, and two, that he will stop backing NATO's current project, the defense of Ukraine. Let's start with NATO's existential threat. NATO stands for North Atlantic Treaty Organization. It's a defensive alliance with 32 members, the US and Canada on one side of the Atlantic Ocean and 30 European nations on the other side, hence the name North Atlantic Treaty Organization. NATO promises to protect every member. An attack on one member is seen as an attack on all. That's the concept. It's supposed to be reassuring, but perhaps it was too reassuring for Europe. For decades, they took the foot off the gas. They allowed the US to act as their protector. They relied on Big Brother America when it came to any defensive needs. And it may have continued had it not been for Trump. Trump believes that Europe is taking the US for a ride. He thinks they aren't contributing enough to NATO, not paying their fair share. Trump had pointed this out throughout his first term, and in February, he made a threat. He said he may allow Russia to invade, and I'm quoting, delinquent NATO countries, nations who did not contribute 2% of their GDP to defense. This threat sent shockwaves through Europe, and objectively, it did work. European NATO members decided to Trump-proof the alliance by just doing as he asked, by increasing their spending. Look at this graph. Up until last year, only 10 NATO members reached the 2% threshold. They spent 2% of their GDP on defense. This year, that number is up to 23 countries. The number of NATO members paying their fair share has more than doubled. This includes both France and Germany. It's something they've been keen to highlight.
But finally, which is nevertheless also to participate in an overall strengthening of the alliance, in particular by fulfilling the contribution objectives and the famous 2% of the gross domestic product.
And that's why I would like to emphasize once again that the discussion about the 2% is one thing. We all know that, in case of doubt, the 2% can only be the lower limit in the long term.
Both France and Germany were talking about NATO contributions yesterday, saying that even 2% was just the beginning. Talk about a complete U-turn. Both France and Germany seem to have secured their place in the NATO and maybe in Trump's good graces. But they're still worried. All of Europe is. And France wants to use this as an opportunity. President Emmanuel Macron wants to wean Europe away from the US.
There has been a strategic awakening among us Europeans, and we must embrace it. We cannot delegate our security to the Americans forever.
That is another form of Trump-proofing, reducing their reliance on the United States. European leaders have gathered in Brussels today to decide how to go forward with this. So that is how NATO is dealing with its existential problems. But what about Ukraine? NATO has been backing Ukraine against Russia for over 2.5 years now. They have put all their eggs in President Volodymyr Zelensky's basket. But Donald Trump doesn't think that way. He doesn't blame only Russia for the war. He blames Zelensky too. Trump has promised to end the war in Ukraine, and reports say that he could ask Ukraine to give up some of its territory to Russia. So how does NATO plan to deal with this? How does Joe Biden plan to deal with this? Well, both camps have been taking steps to Trump-proof their war effort. Earlier this year, NATO took over some responsibilities from the United States. They set up a command center in Germany to coordinate aid supplies and training for Ukraine. By handing over this duty to NATO, the Biden administration partially Trump-proofed it. And that isn't all. Biden has been trying to expedite shipments of aid, the money already promised and allotted to Ukraine. He wants all the aid sent by the end of this year. And the logic again is simple: spend all the money fast before Trump takes the wallet back. But they can't really do much else. New aid commitments won't be possible. Trump could just cancel them the minute he takes over. So there's a limit to Trump-proofing the Ukraine war. And that's bad news for Zelensky. But it may be good news for American taxpayers.